All right, welcome. Today we are going to be covering the basics of writing on social media. These are tips that you're going to be able to use regardless of where your starting point is and regardless of the goal that you have for your account. So I'm going to explain the couple of different routes and lanes that you can use for social media writing and give you some of the basic bare bones steps of what you need to do to get started. So let me get my presentation fired up and share my screen. All right, as we blaze through some of this information, for time's sake, I'm going to go pretty quick. Take the time on your own to again re-watch this content. I've posted links to different examples as I'm going through this, so you can reference those examples and kind of look at some of that stuff on your own time to fully implement these tips. All right, so in this workshop, you're going to learn how to consistently publish posts on multiple platforms, both X and LinkedIn. You're going to learn how to fit social media writing into a busy schedule. I'm going to show you a couple of content repurposing frameworks for those of you who are already writing online. We're going to show you how to craft persuasive posts. We're going to show you how to write the kind of stuff that gets people to engage with you. And I'm also going to show you how to actually network and engage on the platforms without being cringy or overly trying. I'm going to show you how to be one of the cool kids who actually gets people to respond to them on social media. Right. So who is this for? There's basically two different buckets that this sort of education will work for. Number one, if you see yourself as an actual writer and you want to use social media to grow your personal brand, you want to build a back end around your business, right? So if you're a writer, usually you're going to have to create something else on top of the writing to make money in the form of products, services, and things like that. So this is good for you. And if you want to sharpen your skills in a new format. Now, the next bucket that this works well for are online business owners. So a lot of people don't necessarily see themselves as content creators per se, but they understand the value of creating content and using it to not build an audience, right? And for all of you, our goal here isn't just to build an audience. We're here to attract leads. And you can look at a lead as someone who is a future buyer of your products, right? So we're going to show you how to attract leads with content. And this is for online business owners who want to close deals and land clients and customers, right? So there's a lot of people from agency owners, um, freelancers, e-commerce store owners, regardless of what it may be, you can use content on social media, right? So a couple examples of who this would be good for. If you are an author who wants to sell more books, social media is a great way for you to be able to do that. If you are a blogger or a writer who wants to expand their reach onto new platforms, this is good for you. If you're a coach who wants to attract students, this is good for you. Freelancers, agency owners, anyone who basically sees the benefit of using content to quote unquote build your personal brand, this is going to be good for you. So before we get into the education, let's dive into some myths about social media writing that need to die. Number one, you don't need tons of followers to make money. You need the right followers, and you need a plan to monetize those followers and actually capture that value. Big myth, engagement is the most important goal. Incorrect. Attracting future buyers is the most important goal. So a lot of people on social media try to chase engagement, and engagement is great for building an audience, but there's actually a style of posting that can help you attract people who will actually pay for your products and services, where you can make a lot of money without having a huge following at all. So get the idea out of your head that you need 10,000 followers in order to build a business. I've seen people with hundreds of followers who are making thousands of dollars online because they know what they're doing. You need to be a genius level marketer or writer. You need to be a world beater of creativity to do this. Not true. You just need to learn couple simple content creation frameworks. And I'm going to show you some of those today. Another myth that you need to have the perfect topic or niche or product idea before you start. So many of you guys get bogged down in this idea of what is my perfect niche. And it's honestly of just the truth behind it. It's a procrastination mechanism out of fear. The way that you refine what you want to talk about is by putting yourself out there. Another myth is that you need to be an expert or have like insane levels of experience before you're allowed to talk and educate other people. Not true. So get those myths out of your head. You don't need to be everything to everyone in order to do this. You need to build a little bit of authority on your own little corner of the internet, and you will do just fine. So here's some of the mistakes that people make that you want to avoid. One is just not spending enough time engaging on the platforms, especially when you're new. Engagement is going to be key. Posting inconsistently or not posting at all. Leaving bad comments. There's a way to comment that I'm going to show you that works a lot better than the way you guys are doing it. Giving up too early and just being patient. Like I always tell people, if you want to be serious about this, give yourself a goal of like spending a full year getting your bearings when it comes to this. Having a bad content strategy or no strategy at all. I'm going to show you how to have a strategy, and then focusing on the wrong metrics, right? Vanity metrics. Like the number one metric I care about in my business is money, right? And then everything else flows from that. So let's talk about the two different paths to online business success, especially using social media. So you basically have two options that make the most sense for the vast majority of you, right? So number one, you can start an education business based on knowledge and skills you already have. These are for you guys who want to be writers or who want to create some sort of coaching practice based on what you know. The other path is that you can start a service-based business by learning a profitable skill, writing about it, and using social media to close deals. So, option one, start a knowledge business, right? So you could start an education business based on knowledge and skills you already have. So it doesn't have to be something that is, about making money, or, you don't have to be a writing coach. There's lots of different verticals that you can actually go through. So you want to write about a topic you already have an interest and background in, and then you create coaching based on that knowledge, right? So some examples, dating coaches, helping people bake sourdough bread, fitness advice. There are ways to write about something you're experienced in without necessarily having to be the mega expert. Option number two, which is actually a really great route for a lot of you, is to start a service-based business where you are learning a profitable skill, writing about it, and using social media to close deals. So for example, actually, hold on one second. Maybe. Are you all right? All right. Sorry, I got a sick kid here. Let me handle that real quick. Apologies. Got a kid home sick from school, and she was over there in the corner. All right, we're all good. So for example, you could be a copywriter, video editor, content repurposing, SEO, design. This is actually a really good lane. A lot of people actually make the mistake of thinking that you have to have this personal brand where you're like a coach, but actually a lot of the real alpha is actually being one of the people who's working behind the scenes. So I've seen a lot of people who maybe they're not the big expert, but they're the video editor who's behind all the videos for these top creators, right? A lot of people who you see online who have their content posted everywhere, they're not doing all of that on their own. They might be working with an agency that's taking their content and repurposing it across multiple platforms. So if you learn actually a hard skill, you can sell it to other business owners. So this B2B strategy could work really well for you. So here is like, if you have zero idea what you want to focus on, I would go and reference some of these resources that I have here that I've created for people in the past, right? So I wrote a blog post on how to figure out what you're good at and how to turn it into career ideas. So I would visit that link. I've recorded webinars where I show people my process for digging into your experience and coming up with ideas, right? So inside my community, I have a more like a super detailed version of it, but I actually previewed this audience topic research system in a webinar that I recorded. So you can take a look at that as well. And then I have this audience research questionnaire that I give to every single one of my students. And it actually asks you questions that you can dig through in your experience, right? So what you guys need to understand is that a lot of you already have experience that's valuable. So in the questionnaire, I go through questions like, what are the things that come naturally to you that other people wish they were good at? What problems and challenges have you overcome in your life already? What career experience have you picked up along the way? Right. So you guys have been alive for multiple decades. You've overcome challenges, you've accomplished goals, you've picked up skills. So people who are a couple steps behind you will want to learn those. If you want to go the route where you want to start a service-based business, this nightmare mode protocol actually will work really well. So like the dirty little secret in the online business world is that really a lot of people don't know what they're doing. So if you actually got good enough at a skill where you had a basic level of competency, you'd be fine, right? So say you have no idea what you want to do, but eventually you stumble on an idea for a skill you want to learn. Say you want to pick up copywriting skills. Well, what you would do is basically lock yourself into a room, and for the next couple of weeks, all you would do is watch free content on YouTube about whatever skill it is you're trying to learn. So you'd enter your first queries like how to start a freelance copywriting business or copywriting tutorial. You're going to watch and take notes on all the videos in the top results. As you go through and questions start to arise in your mind, you're going to note those questions and you're going to look up videos with those questions as the queries in your search. And you're basically going to repeat this process until you have a well-rounded idea. So if you really want to get up to speed with this, like I would spend a 2-week period where you do nothing but research and actually figure out how to be competent, right? So there is no way around this. There's no way around having the competence that you need to be successful. And if any of you guys are serious about doing this, you're only like 30 days away from basic level competency that you can use. So if you really want to be serious, the nightmare protocol is the strategy for you. Right? So this is all this stuff is going to be given, all this stuff is going to be like given that you kind of have an idea of what you want to write about or what sort of business that you have to start. So like once you have that stuff in mind, it's time to start posting on social. So for those of you who don't have an extremely great idea, what I would do is go back and go through some of those resources, right? So audience research, like that's kind of an entirely different beast in and of itself. So like go back and peel through those resources, and then you'll have an answer for what to do next. Right? So use this 30-day window to your advantage, right? So at the end of next month, I'm going to be launching a cohort, and it's going to have a couple, upwards of 20 different speakers, like huge names on social media who you would know, 6 and 7 big business owners. And it's going to be, we're going to be diving into the nitty gritty, right? So if you want to be prepared for that, I want you to be focused for these next couple of weeks and actually just begin to post on social media regularly and have things going so that by the time we get there, you'll be ready to dive in for some nuanced information. All right. So a couple things to remember when you're brand new. You don't need to know everything up front. I think the biggest thing that gets in your guys' way as new creators or new business owners is that you are trying to figure out all of the answers for what to do before you start doing things, right? So the way to do it, the way to get knowledge is through your action, right? So you can post your way into a solid strategy. You can start using your social media in the beginning as a playground for your ideas, and it can turn into something better in the future, but nothing will happen until you get started. So here's the timeline sort of roadmap to success, or what you should be doing in order to reach your goals, right? So if you have a tiny account where you have less than 1,000 followers, the ROI on engaging and replying to other people's posts is way higher than actually posting. So you still want to post, but you actually want to spend more time engaging than posting when you're new. And when you're from in the 1 to 10,000 range, you want to focus on posting a mix of authority content and kind of story based personality content. And I'll show you more of that in the future. And then you want to engage and start to close deals for your initial offer in the DMs, right? So once you have a bigger account where you're at 10,000 plus, you can focus on well-rounded business stuff like scaling and growing your email list, making your offer better. And then once you have a bigger account, it's easier for you to do collaborations with other people and kind of leverage your quote unquote clout, so to speak. So the next piece is coming up with your 4-factor analysis. And for those of you who don't know what this is like the key strategy that I teach every single one of my students. It works for writers, business owners, all the above. Like, this is the core strategy that I've taught repeatedly to help anyone come up with a set of ideas and topics that they can run with in the future, right? So the game of social media and the game of writing, what you want to do is have a map of everything people in your audience are experiencing. And then each piece of content you write is solving some of those individual problems, right? So if you are targeting business owners who want to use SEO to grow their traffic, okay, one of the problems and frustrations they might have is that they don't have enough time to create content. One of the problems or frustrations they might have is that they don't understand what to put in their posts to get more people to read them, right? So what I do is create a spreadsheet, and you can see here, this is what I use. Like, all of my content comes from my 4-factor analysis. So what you do, you write down answers for what are people in your target audience afraid of? What are they frustrated with? What do they want to achieve in the short term? And then what do they want to achieve in the long term, right? So if you look here, I guarantee some of you guys, especially if you're writers, have you any of you guys ever experienced any of these problems or frustrations when it comes to your writing careers or when it comes to creating content, right? So I have all these answers mapped out up front. And basically what you're doing is making educated guesses for what your audience is looking to get solved. And then you use that as the bridge to the content that you're creating. So this makes it a lot easier. So if you sit down and do this once, then you won't have to constantly be worrying about what to do when it comes to thinking up ideas. Also, if you want to like shortcut this process, and I encourage you to do so, you can use tools like AI for audience research. I love using tools for audience research. You can even use AI for doing research on your business idea, right? So you use this prompt to say, hey, I'm a writing coach and my target audience is writers who want to improve their skills. I'm a fitness coach and my target audience is 40-year-old moms who want to get in shape. I am a freelance copywriter and my target audience is software companies who want to use content to grow their businesses. Can you create a list of the following to help me do audience research? Then you can copy and paste this prompt, and then ChatGPT will actually spit out pretty good answers. So if you're really stuck trying to use that process, then use ChatGPT. Now here's where like the sauce comes in. So when you have your 4-factor analysis, what you want to do is use those core ideas and use them to come up with ideas for content. So here's how the process works with like a quick overview. So you choose one of the answers. I'm frustrated because I exercise 3 times a week, but I'm not losing fat. The next thing you do is like try to create a quick win or an outcome for that person, right? So in this case, I put something, I burned fat by walking 10,000 steps per day. After that, you can turn your outcome into an idea for a post. So for in this example, I came up with like a pretend thread for a hook. It's like, are you hitting the gym? Are you hitting the gym constantly yet the fat won't fall off? I had the same problem until I discovered this simple and easy method to drop fat fast. And then you'd go through and you would link that idea to the actual content, which is the quick win. And then you'd go through and explain the 10,000 steps per day method. So I use the 4 factors, like everything comes from 4 factors. My threads come from 4 factors. My regular posts come from 4 factors. All of my posts come from the 4 factors. So you have this bedrock of every single thing your target audience is going through. And then you bridge your ideas off of that. So that's how you come up with content that resonates with other people. Now let's go through and look at like some different post formats and talk about some ways that you can write them well. So first you just have the standalone posts, right? These are kind of the posts that fit in the within the character limit, and they're trying to have quick pieces of advice that are helpful to the audience. You can use stories, you can use different little rhetorical devices to make your post stand out. So here's just a quick example. Like, here's a classic post example style people use is like, okay, back in the day, I was this, and this, right? So 2 years ago, I had no idea what content to create. I was struggling to get views and I wasn't making any money. Fast forward to now, and I'm making money with my writing. I have thousands of followers and I do something I love every single day, right? So it's like a before and after picture. But what you want to do is tie every single idea that you have in your 4 factor analysis and then just begin to learn how to write posts kind of by studying the structure of other pieces. And there's a couple different like rhetorical devices, little examples that you can use. I'll kind of breeze through quickly, right? So number one, you can use metaphors. Money is freedom. The media is a vile machine. You're taking a concept and you're transitioning it into something else, right? So I've written posts where like I say like anxiety is a sign, right? And then I go through and say, okay, it's pointing you in the direction of things that need to be fixed, right? So you're taking a concept and you're connecting it to something else. So you'll have examples of these little rhetorical devices that you can use to reference. Another one is antithesis. Like if you notice on social media, like a lot of the writing people are good that gets attention is where it's like you're using like contrast and opposing ideas and combining them together, right? So you'll see a lot of contrasting sort of style of posts on social media. So you want to try antithesis for that. Personification is taking something that isn't human and making it human, right? Everything else is an illusion that lives in your mind. So like an illusion doesn't actually, it's not something that is alive, but you're talking about it and making it have human qualities, right? Your intuition isn't a person, but it may exaggerate, but it never lies, right? So you're actually giving it these human qualities. This one you see a lot. Like I've used this one quite a bit. It's basically where you repeat the same word over and over and over again. And it has this sort of like a rhythmic effect that makes people want to keep reading. And then you can use these sort of like parallel phrases. They have like a similar similar grammatical structure, but you switch things up and you put some of those opposites together, right? So these are things that you can review on your own time, but there's just a couple little tricks that you can use and start to begin the the process of learning how to write these posts, right? And so another thing you can do, like in the beginning, like obviously, like in the future, you don't want to write just like templated content that looks like everyone else's. But in the beginning, modeling content styles is the way that you sort of get the rhythm of learning how to write on social media. So it's literally like spending a lot of time on these accounts and kind of reverse engineering the way that the posts look and writing your own versions of them. Right. So number one, like an easy way you can do this, it's like find a popular post on social media and swipe the big idea behind the post. Don't copy the post. Don't plagiarize the post, but swipe the big idea behind the post and write your own version of it. Right. So here's an example. And what's interesting about this on the left is a tweet that I saw from Tweet Hunter. This one on the right, this is actually a tweet that I wrote without even referencing another tweet. I wasn't even thinking about this tweet originally when I wrote this one. I just found both of them and realized that they were connected. And so what happens is after you start to do this for a while, you sort of intuitively start to understand how to do this, right? So the big idea from this post is like that small habits can lead to big results. So in this post, he's adding up all the numbers of the cumulative effect. In my post, I'm sort of talking about the small habits that lead to the big results. So that's the way that you learn how to write posts. And if you want to get real simple, like there's a lot of basic post structures for beginners that work quite well, right? So you have the list post. That one didn't pop up. You have your tip of the day, right? So it's like quick marketing tip, quick fitness tip, quick fat loss tip, quick copywriting tip. You can write posts about how to achieve a certain outcome. Some of these links aren't working, but then you can also write a post about how to, like, a simple, impactful statement that sort of polarizes other people. For example, you can say something like exercise isn't exercise isn't the key to losing weight. You can do exercise isn't the key to losing weight, diet is the key to losing weight, right? Something that is a simple standalone item. And then another thing people do, I don't rely on this too much, but you can ask open-ended questions. Like a lot of people like to do this for engagement, but asking questions is also really good. What are more ways to find ideas for your posts? Especially in the beginning, if you are spending a lot of time doing comments, if you write good comments, you can take those comments and you can turn them into standalone tweets. And then you can take a popular post and use it to write new posts, right? So let's say you have a listicle post where you listed out 5 ways to do something. Well, that same post can turn into 5 different posts where you're spelling out the individual process of doing each single step. And then you could take the same post and write it in multiple different ways, right? So if you have a post where you gave a simple little tip, you could write a story about how you accomplished that tip. You can show a case study before and after of what life looked like after you implemented the tip, or if someone else did. You could talk about the biggest mistakes people make. You can make a hot take related to it. So there's like a lot of different directions you can go with this, right? So that's the standalone post. Next is the thread, right? So if you've ever seen a thread before, it's a series of multiple tweets that are combined together. So a thread has multiple parts. So it has the hook, which is meant to grab attention. You have the body after that, which is a range of 5 to 15 tweets that achieve the outcome. And then at the end, you want to have a call to action where you are asking people to do the next obvious step. For me, I tend to promote my email list with a thread, right? So a hook is a scroll stopping first tweet that you use to grab attention. You want to spark curiosity. You want people, you basically, your hook once has to answer like the why should someone read this? How will it help me? And what will I learn? The easiest way to write hooks and to learn how to do them is to kind of study other hooks and look at the frame of them. And again, you're not like copying, but you're looking at the frame of them just to see how it works, right? So here's a couple of examples. Like the best way to learn how to do this is to look at what already works and come up with your own versions, right? So in this case, this is sort of like a before and after thread. This is actually a friend of mine, Jose Rosado, right? So this is a classic kind of beginner thread technique that all of you guys can use. Like I used to struggle with insert the problem. I found a way to I kind of stumbled onto the way to fix the problem. Now my life is amazing. Here's why. Right? So I used to struggle to write a single tweet. Now I write 10 posts a day. Here's the one mindset shift I made to write more content. I used to be lazy and procrastinate constantly. Now I'm constantly motivated. Here are the 5 things I did to change my situation. So why does this work? People learn best through stories, right? And people love before and after stories because they speak to that idea of the hero's journey. And it's the kind of if I can do it, you can do it sort of effect. Here's another example. Here's a post that I tweeted a couple days ago. Now, did I cheat a little bit because I was using like a big dollar amount? Yes. But if you talk about a result you've been able to get, and then if you could talk about like when you'd go back in the past and do differently, people love this. Like this is one of the classic hook frameworks people love because people want to get the same result as you, but then they don't want to make all the same mistakes that you did in the process. So if you can talk about something you've accomplished, right? So it's like, I lost 30 pounds in 2023. Like if I could, knowing what I know now, here's what I do differently. So it speaks to the desired outcomes. It promises speed because you'll help achieve the result faster by not making the same mistakes as the person before you. Another hook example is, share your hot take and then use the contrast to talk about what you want to write about. So it's like hot take, posting for engagement only on Twitter is dumb. This is what the serious players on Twitter are doing to make money. And then for the body of the thread, you basically want to go step by step and fulfill the promise of the hook. And actually, the hook is really the hardest part. Once the hook is done, the body pretty much writes itself. And you're basically writing standalone tweets that look like standalone tweets, and you're combining the ideas on top of each other. And then at the end of your thread, you just want to have a call to action. You want to ask people to sign up to your email list. That's my preferred option because I sell most of my stuff through email. But sometimes you might want to promote a product, or even if you're new and you don't have anything to sell, you don't have an email list, you could simply use your call to action to get people to do stuff that you want. So what my process looks like for writing threads, I choose an idea from that 4-factor analysis. I create a quick win, and then you want to have a swipe file of threads handy. And what a swipe file is just collections of examples for inspiration. Some people like to use tools like Tweet Hunter as well, where they just show you a bunch of hooks and you can just look at them. But I like having other stuff in front of me for reference. And then you can write down 10 hook ideas. So I always tell people to write down 10 ideas for any sort of post, but for specifically for threads, you can use the hooks. And if you want to find more ideas for threads, one thing I like to do, especially when you have a library of content, sort through your posts by views, and then find the post that performed best as standalone post, and then you could just use that post as a hook for your thread. And then if you have a X Pro account, or if you're using LinkedIn, you could write a long form post on social media. So the long form posts are similar to threads, except instead of putting it in multiple tweets, you just put it all in one tweet and you format it to look kind of like a mini blog post. So the same rules apply. It's essentially the same exact thing as a thread, except you're putting it all in one area. So a lot of people started to do these long form posts on X because they saw that they were like a little bit favored in the algorithm. I've actually gone back to doing more threads recently, but make a mix of these long form posts could work too, right? So for me, we spent a lot of time talking about X, and really my strategy on LinkedIn right now is to just basically repurpose everything that I have on X and just put it over on LinkedIn, right? So the posts that work best on LinkedIn, kind of a high level overview, like telling story based post works really well. And then also there's these things called carousels, and we'll get into what those are. But basically, you turn your thread into pictures and images, and then you post them on LinkedIn as a slide deck. And then also similar, these authority posts, similar to Twitter, where you're just giving content ideas, giving tips, how-to pieces of advice. Those work well on LinkedIn, but I basically just more or less sort of copy and paste my stuff over there, right? So how you repurpose from X to LinkedIn, you turn your threads into the LinkedIn carousels. You copy and paste your top posts from X and you put them on LinkedIn. And then you take more of your authority based posts and you turn them into story posts and publish them on LinkedIn. It's like if we could see here. So here's like a real quick example. This is a post where it's talking about how the networking process changed Laura's life, right? So it's a piece of advice, but it's broken down into a well formatted story that other people will enjoy. Now, there's also, for those of you who are already writing content and you've been doing long form content, there are a couple simple content repurposing strategies that I use. Like a lot of my content actually comes from my Medium account, right? So I turn blog posts and newsletters into threads. I take highlighted sentences on Medium and turn them into short posts. And then I take sections of blog posts and I turn them into sort of those mid form posts on X and LinkedIn, right? So I take a headline from a blog post and I turn it into a hook. I turn a blog post section into bullet points. And then the subheadings can become the post titles for some of those mid form posts on LinkedIn or Twitter, right? So if you want to write blog posts and turn them into threads, I had this popular blog post that was a listicle. So all I did, I massaged the headline of the post. So the headline of the post originally was 8 really small things you do that say a lot about you. Then I massaged it a little bit into a thread and added some context, a little bit of a hook. And then I retained the actual content of the headline and put it at the end of my hook. And then I condensed the blog post section into bullet points. And then I just posted the thread. blog post sentences can be turned into short form posts too. So this is a blog post sentence that got a lot of highlights on my Medium post. It says rid yourself of the illusion that you have time. So I just took that same sentence and added a couple of a couple of words underneath. And if you could see, I'm using that repetition of the first word technique, right? So you can see how some of these strategies are combined together. Blog post sections can be turned into mid-form posts. Like here's a popular Medium post I wrote. And so basically I realized like this line, a lot of people highlighted. So I could tell that could be like a good opening sentence. So I just took that same opening line here, put that here, and then I kind of condensed the information from the rest of the post and turned that into a standalone kind of like mid-form post on social media. Also, you can condense blog posts into tweets, right? So let's say you have like a popular list post, right? So I wrote this post a while back. If you do these things, you're damn near guaranteed to become a full-time writer. So you see here, I actually wrote like full detailed explanations for each. But then when I go back on Twitter, it's the same content, but I just took like the subheadings and turned them into quick little hitting pieces of information. So once you get the hang of it, you'll realize you can take a lot of the information you already have, especially if you've been creating stuff, and just start running it through multiple styles, right? So if you're brand new, this would be like my newbie posting strategy. I'd post 1 to 3 daily posts on X, 1 daily post on LinkedIn, 1 thread or carousel per week, 20 comments per day, and I'd perform this for 90 days straight. So the tips for getting the most out of your system, like the number one thing for me is that you create your 4-factor analysis, which again is a map of the core pain points and desires of who you're trying to target. And you just continue to work from that over and over again. So I don't have to go to the drawing board when I'm coming up with ideas. I have 60 core ideas of what my audience is going through and what they want to accomplish. And then I work from that list every single day and follow this process for 90 days, and you'll do really well. So after that, let's say you've been posting for 90 days, you want to begin to double down on what works. So one thing that you need to understand about a lot of content creators, they're literally repeating the same ideas over and over and over again, right? So sometimes I do this. Like if I've waited 90 days, I'll just literally copy and paste a post that performed well every single quarter, right? So I've posted the same tweet 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And then you could take the same tweet and rewrite a unique version of that post, right? So maybe you had a standalone post that was just a statement. You could take that same post and turn it into a listicle. Look for questions people ask you on your top post and then write the answers to those questions as new posts. And then you can combine multiple threads into these mega threads. So like once you have this library of content, there's so much more you can do with what you already have. All right, let's dive into networking. So the key to you long run being able to succeed on social media is for you to build a network. And this is where the Dream 100 strategy comes in. So your Dream 100 strategy, this comes from Russell Brunson in one of his books about I believe it's in Expert Secrets. But basically, you want to create a list of people that you engage with on a regular basis. And the goal for this is to eventually get them to work with you. Not to do it right away, not to play a tit for tat exchange game, but for eventually some of that effort to be reciprocated, right? So the key is to avoid being needy and never expect anything in return from a single creator ever. So this Dream 100 is a list of people in your topic or in adjacent spaces that you think might benefit you in the long run to work with. So you create your list. What I do, I actually create a Twitter list, but I don't name it Dream 100 or engagement list because then it looks like you're trying to engage with them. And it looks a little bit gimmicky. So I think I named my list like dope writers. So it's like, hey, this is a list of really cool writers that I like. And I engage with that, right? So here's like an example. Here's an example of the kind of strategy that would actually work. Right. So what a lot of you guys are making the mistake of doing is you're making the ask too early. Like, don't reach out to a random creator and ask, can I work for you for free? Or can you share my post? Like, it's needy. But if you played the long game, you could get a lot of people to share your content, right? It's like one of the reasons why some of my posts do well is I ask my friends to like and retweet it. But I developed the friendship first. So in the beginning, you could just spend a few weeks leaving thoughtful comments, liking and retweeting their stuff. Send them a DM with a sincere thank you. Mention something specific about their content and just leave it at that. Then go back to liking their stuff. Maybe you send them another something specific. Say, hey, I saw you're into this random hobby. Like, here's something cool I found. Or, hey, 2 months ago, you mentioned this content strategy. I've actually been using it and it's working really well. Here are my results. Hey, man, I just bought your course. Like, it's been amazing. I've used it to do all these cool things. Go back to commenting and liking their stuff. Then maybe down the road, you're like, hey, I really like your work. It inspired me to come up with this thread. Thought you might enjoy it. You don't even ask them to retweet it. You don't ask them to like it. You don't ask them to comment on it. But you're a name that they've now seen multiple times. Like, regardless of how big a creator is, they check their notifications. They begin to remember the names of people who actively engage with them. Then feel like, hey, I wrote this, thought you might enjoy it. They'll share it, right? So here are some tips to comment like a pro. Like, a lot of you guys are lacking in the comment department where you're making the mistakes of basically like rewording the post or just saying like, hey man, great job, which is fine, but it's not going to get the attention of the people you're trying to talk to. So if you want to write really good comments, you want to add your own 2 cents to the conversation. One of the easiest things you can do is just simply to crack jokes. And then you can sincerely engage with creators you enjoy instead of using like gimmicky networking tactics. So here are some examples from my own life, right? So this guy often posts like anti-red pill sort of wisdom. And I just cracked a little joke at the end of it related to what he was talking about. And yeah, that comment got 27,000 views. This was a post that someone wrote. The guy deleted the post, but his reason, his post was about like why are men depressed? So instead of just writing one answer, see how I turned it into a tweet that looks like a standalone post in and of itself, with the line spacing, with the structure, with the stylistic look. That's how you stand out. Add to the add to the combo, right? So Jay, he had wrote this long post about everything that it took for him to get where he was, and then he mentioned how long it took him. So I just pointed out like keyword 7 years, right? So for someone like him, he understands how hard or how much time it took. So when I left that little comment, it's kind of like, yeah, dude, I'm someone who's in the know. Like, I get it. So if you're in the beginning, the by far and away best strategy for you in the beginning is to honestly spend more time engaging and commenting than actually writing posts. It's like you're more likely to engage your way to 1,000 followers than you are to write your way to 1,000 followers. Now, that's kind of the broad level overview of the writing part of it. And here's a little bit of the prospecting part of it. So, if you want to get good at the social media game, you need to learn how to use the DMs properly. So, if you don't have anything to sell in the beginning, like let's say you're just creating content about a topic, you don't know exactly what you want to sell, you can actually use your audience to come up with the idea for your first offer. So, look at people who like your content, reach out to them, and you could either ask them open-ended questions in the DMs just to learn more about them, or you could send them a pitch to just do a free sort of clarity call for them and ask them a couple different questions related to their situation, give them some advice, and call it a day. So that's what you can do if you want to like get your feet a little bit wet when it comes to the idea of even coaching somebody. So you can ask them these questions. What's your biggest struggle when it comes to losing weight? If I can make a magic wand and make everything better when it comes to your focus and productivity, what would it look like? What do you think you need most to hit your goals? What are the things you've tried in the past that didn't work? What kind of results to creating content would make you thrilled in like 6 months? And then you ask open-ended questions and listen. You keep following up with additional questions, get them to elaborate. And then you just provide a little bit of free advice and thank them for the call. And then after that, you can use Otter AI, which is a transcription tool, and you could review all the transcripts to find like common sticking points, dream outcomes, past failures, and then you use the patterns that come up with your initial offer idea. And you can even go so far as to copy and paste some of the common phrases they use to get into your product description. And then you can start to test either doing like a one-off coaching session or doing, like sample trial runs of your service to sharpen your skills. So, that is a broad level. We just breezed through a ton of different pieces of information here. I'm going to give you these slides after this for you to go through and look more at some of those examples that I provided. But now, for those of you who got to skate, you can skate, but I will open things up now to questions for anyone who has any. And just type those questions in the chat. Carrie asked, is there a reason you never talk about Facebook? For me, personally, I'm just bearish. I'm just bearish on Facebook as a platform. I'm just not like very bullish on it as a platform that I would personally use to grow my business. There are people who do well on Facebook. I just don't use it at all, so I don't have much of any any advice to give on it. Basically, how many hours a day do you dedicate to reading social media and writing your pieces? Well, Well, I dedicate roughly 2 hours per day to the actual writing part. And then I have a phone addiction. And fortunately for me, my phone addiction helps me make money, but I'm pretty much on Twitter all the time. And so like what I tell people a lot of the time is like you can use a lot of your you can use a lot of your dead time to post stuff, or you can use a lot of your dead time to comment and reply to people. And then you can also think about writing doesn't always have to be you sitting at your desk. A lot of my tweets are fired off from my phone, like when an idea randomly comes into my mind. Like I've written viral tweets sitting in my car in a checkout line. I'm constantly observing things that are going on and using that in my content. How do you find the time to do all the writing and posting and commenting on others' posts? Yeah, that's a good question. For me, the number one strategy that I used for the writing part when I had a 9 to 5 job is that I would wake up at 5 a.m. I would write for about 2 hours, and then I would go to work. And then let's say on the other ancillary activities I needed to do, like commenting on posts, something I might do over my lunch break. So just like blocking off chunks of time to do that makes the most sense. And if you use scheduling, if you use scheduling tools, then you could write a large amount of tweets or posts on LinkedIn in one fell swoop, right? So often I'll write multiple days worth of content at the same time. But like another honest answer of that is when you're new, you have so you have less room to be entitled, and you have more, like you just have to put in like more elbow grease. You have to put in more elbow grease. It's just going to require you to like make trade-offs. So it's like, hey, instead of watching Netflix at night, you could be on your computer engaging. Instead of being on your phone, you could be on your instead of being on your phone passively consuming, you could be on your phone actively engaging. So it's all about creating time blocks. Like find some window in your day where you can spend 1 to 2 hours writing, put it on a calendar, and start writing. And then you could just sprinkle in engagement time like throughout the rest of your day in as many possible little pockets of time. How to engage how to engage younger audiences with a short attention span. Well, the number one thing that is just to post is to just post some of this short form content. Like everything we just talked about is the type of content that's engineered for quick hitting sort of wisdom that's designed for people with short attention spans. Can I post about fitness related content on LinkedIn? Very interesting you bring that up. One of the biggest growing markets I see in the future is fitness content on LinkedIn. Dan Go was probably one of the pioneers of this, where like he's kind of found like this blue ocean where there's not a lot of competition, and he's been crushing it on fitness with LinkedIn. So I actually think fitness on LinkedIn is going to be a huge vertical in 2024. What's the minimum time commitment realistically to grow to 10,000 followers within 6 months? I don't know the answer to that. And I think the more important thing isn't exactly how many followers you create. As we dive more deeply into this, the biggest thing for you is going to be how to create an audience that you can that you can monetize properly, regardless of how many followers you have. How can I go about creating authority on X about a specific topic when I don't have expertise and or testimonials? That's a good question. So, number one, go through and do some of the research that I have linked in some of the slides when I send it to you afterwards. Because the thing about it is that in the beginning, like the best case study is going to be you, right? So you might have to get some results for yourself first and then post about it online. But then after that, you can look about like what are some of like and when you go through the audience questionnaire that I'll have linked to you in the slides. Actually, I should have done this in the beginning, but I'll share the links to the slides for you guys who are still here so you can just have a copy of it for yourself right now. But go through and dig through you can go through and dig through your past experiences and you can just talk about the things you already know how to do. Talk about a hobby that you already have. Talk about career expertise that you already have. Right? One of my friends, she actually created a business where she taught people how to land good corporate gigs. So she had built a career in corporate. She knew how to land interviews, how to network. So she just created content about that. So you can create content about stuff that you already know. But if you go through and do some of these research exercises, you'll come to find that you have um, you'll have a lot more things to share than you might think. What else do we have? Let's see. About the part in your journey where you don't have any idea what to write about, where would you start? I mean, if you start learning the skill, I can really just start writing about it and then find my niche and clients. What I would do is go through and do some of the background research that I had mentioned, and then simply just start talking about what you've learned, and then take the answers and recommendations and like suit that to what kind of business you might want to start, and then go from there, right? So, for example, if you are more inclined to like written communication, then maybe being a copywriter might make a lot of sense for you. Maybe if you're more inclined to like visual stuff, then video editing or design might make the most sense for you. But honestly, the number one thing to do is to just dive into the arena and figure some of these things out on your own. Like a lot of you guys are, again, it's kind of like this waiting for the answer before you jump in sort of thing. And like the reality of it is you need to spend the time just jumping in. Is long form content dead in 2024? Would you write a series of Medium articles, kind of like a thread? No, I don't. Long form content will never die. Long form content is what you do to further demonstrate your competence to your audience. And especially when it comes to something like a newsletter, like you can use long form content to kind of immerse people deeply into your world and help them learn more about you. So it's like short form gathers the attention, and then long form like retains the person and gives them more deep dives of wisdom so that they'll trust you a lot more when it comes to making like a buying decision with you. What scheduling tool do I recommend? I personally use Hype Fury. Do I use Instagram or TikTok? A little bit. Um, Probably gonna do a lot more on Instagram and TikTok in the future. But like kind of the written word is my like main strength. Like I'm decent on video, but the written word is my main strength. So I'm focusing primarily on X and LinkedIn for the year. Let's see. Sierra says, what if your audience is mostly from low income populations? LGBTQ, autistic, ADHD, people of color. I know some are affluent, but most are quite poor, broke. So I'm thinking about how I could sell something valuable. Unlike with therapy, my services wouldn't be covered by insurance. So yeah, Sierra's a therapist who writes about helping LGBTQ people, etc. Some of them don't make as much money. Well, you honestly you try to provide as much value with your free content as possible. But then if some people can't pay you, they can't pay you. Right. So this is like my example of that. Like sometimes people can't afford to work with me. So I try to do things like time to time like this to give them value. But you're as a business owner, like if you want to be properly compensated for your time and if you want to turn this into a business, like you're going to have to attract people who have money and who can afford to pay you for your services. So the best way to do that is actually to charge a lot of money to the people who can afford it and then use those resources to create lower priced versions of what you have. Right. So if you work with someone one on one, you could charge them a lot more money because they're working closely with you. But then you might take the insights you've learned from one on one coaching and turn them into a course that costs a lot less money, but has the same information. I've been posting on LinkedIn since all April and but I lack consistency. It's incredibly daunting for me to reach prospective clients. I'm terrified of failing if my work is and if my work is worth getting paid or the client is underpaying me. I know it comes from self-esteem issues. Can you suggest any ideas for overcoming this? I think the number one thing again is like creating a content system. I think self-doubt and uncertainty comes from a lack of being prepared, right? So if you actually spent a couple weeks doing audience research, you put together a list of your four factors analysis, we have 60 different answers to all the questions. I guarantee you'd be a lot more confident that you'd know what to say. And then it would be a lot easier for you to regularly post. Can you swap LinkedIn for Instagram? I mean, yeah, you can use any of these platforms. Um, you can use any of these platforms that you want, but X and LinkedIn are the ones that I'm focusing on personally. Um, Instagram is good, but like honestly, my Instagram just isn't very good at this moment, right? So I wouldn't have a lot in the way to give you of what to do over there. So I try not to talk about things I don't have a ton of personal experience with. But yeah, I mean, definitely. How long does it take to typically see traction, and how do you validate your metrics? Man, I mean, the question of how long does it take to get traction, not to be a cop out it, but it's like it literally is like it depends, right? So if you post one tweet a day, you might reach traction at a certain point. But if you post 100 tweets a day, you'll get traction. You might get traction sooner. And if 100 sounds like a ludicrous number, some of your favorite accounts that have huge followings, like some of those people are posting like 100 times a day, which I'm not saying I would recommend, but there's so many factors that there's so many factors that lead to traction. It's like, how often do you post? How consistent are you? What is your speed of execution from learning a skill and implementing the skill? What topic are you talking about? How well did you research your audience? How closely are you sticking to your 4 factors and mapping your content to the core desires of your readers? Like those are all factors you have to think of. But honestly, if you're brand new to this, whether it's in content creation, give yourself a year to work on this. And then in terms of getting momentum, if I'm going to put a hard number on it, 90 days would be my recommendation. Say you have 1,000 followers. Is it possible to collaborate with a much larger account? And if so, how would you approach it? Yeah, it is. You want to give, so whenever you're trying to not just get a big account to say yes to your collab, the question you want to ask yourself when you're trying to get anyone to do anything is what's in it for them, right? So there has to be a reason why they would want to work with you. And you have to incentivize them to say yes. So some ways that you can incentivize them to say yes. Number one, let's say you might cover something specific that their audience would be interested in, but that they don't necessarily have the knowledge to talk about. So maybe you want to work with a fitness influencer who really focuses on the exercise part about it, but you're really good at nutrition. So you could go with their audience and talk about that, right? Maybe there is a life coach you want to reach out to, but you're actually really focused on the nuances of social skills, which falls under that umbrella, but it isn't the exact same thing. So like filling in gaps in their content is good. Um, I would focus on people who are a couple, like I wouldn't aim like necessarily for huge influencers, but people who are like a good example is like a podcast that's on the come up, right? So they're always looking for content. So you could reach out to um some of those people and pitch them to be on their shows, right? So you have to think about like what is potentially in it for them. And like I probably wouldn't aim with like if you have 1,000 followers, maybe don't reach out to someone with 348,000 followers and try to collab with them. But there might be someone with 6,000 followers who'd collab with you or 3,000. Does being part of a community help create traction for your work? Yeah, 100%. Like most people who have done really well on Twitter or LinkedIn, they've created some sort of like collaboration engagement pod to like goose their numbers, right? So like the big secret to social media growth is like most people like a lot of people rig their growth through mutually exchanged engagement. So if you have a community of people where you can re-engineer that effect, it's really good. In my community, I'm actually going to be planning on creating more of these more of these layers where we can get some of this engagement popping off. What's the advantage of X Premium? Yeah, you get more. You literally they just promise you that you get more reach. There's more features where you can post the long form post where you can't do it without that. Um, and you just get more. There's more features. Do you have any suggestions for creating content strategies for LinkedIn? How and where to start from? Should I see other creators' templates, or is the way I can design my own needs? I mean, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I spent the whole workshop kind of talking about. So I would just kind of like rewatch it and go through like each individual piece of it in the slides to kind of break down that process. All right, let's take one or two more if anyone has one, and we can call it a day. Suggestions I have for authors, I would, if you already have a book, I would take all the content from your books and sprinkle it out. One of my students, Jade, has been doing this actually. She has a new book coming out, and she's just been pulling quotes from her book. Um, she's been pulling quotes from her book and posting them like every single day. What knowledge, what knowledge management system are you using? I'm like I'm a pen and paper guy, right? So the writing system is the four factors analysis, and then I use it to write ideas for posts. But I don't use Notion or Trello boards or anything like kind of complex like that. I'm more of a I'm more of an analog sort of dude. So I just keep it pretty basic and simple. I find that like don't get me wrong. So for all the Notion people, the second brain people out there, don't kill me in the comments. It works for a lot of people, but for a lot of people, it's a form of procrastination to put together these complex and elaborate Notion boards and stuff like that when you really just need to be doing the work. Last one, would you say that we should focus more on short form, long form writing? Are you collecting more social subscribers from social media or Medium? Are these tractions or are these tractions different phases? Yeah, it's very it's very dependent on what your goals are. Like if you're primarily just trying to like you if you have like a business and a service provider that you just want to grow that, you probably don't need to be writing as much long form. You could probably stick with short form. But if like you want to be a writer and get to the point where you're writing books, then you want to do long form as well. It's like the optimal answer is both. Any tips on maintaining consistency? Create a writing system. Do a similar set of things on a daily basis. And kind of laid out what that writing system is. And then again, create dedicated time blocks for your work. Find a strong why for you wanting to get into this in the first place. Stay present, take it one day at a time, and go from there.